a lot of therapies that have been brought forth actually have a yogic basis to them. There's scientific evidence and proof as to how breath work, which we'll do in a little bit, meditation, and then we move the body because it is the vessel, right? We only have one.
Yoga became popular in treatment programs, but it seemed to me it was more of a filler.
Your traditional recovery modalities focus on understanding the addiction, but yoga works through the body and nervous system, helping us regulate stress, reduce cravings, build tolerance for difficult emotions. That's really important.
That is absolutely important because I'm not always able to go to my therapist, go to my doctor, get something for something.
When people fall into depression or rumination, they're in the past, they regret. So you're living in a time that doesn't exist. If you have anxiety and worry, which a lot of people do, you're in the future, again, doesn't exist. If you can sit and learn to be in stillness, even just taking a deep breath, 99.99% of the time you are fine in that moment.
This is the Recovery Guide podcast with Michael Herbert, where powerful stories and actionable insights empower individuals on their recovery journey to build resilience and make a lasting impact. I'm glad you're here, so let's get started. Today's guest is Fern Conn, a certified yoga teacher with 35 years of experience helping others build healthier, more mindful lives. As the owner of the Dancing Lion Studio and School, Fern is a master teacher, mentor, and community leader who specializes in yoga, meditation, and transformational teaching training. Today, we're going to discuss yin yoga, meditation, and do a live breath work exercise. I know you'll love it. So we're here today with Fern Conn from the Lion Dance Yoga Studio.
Dancing Lion?
The Dancing Lion Yoga Studio in Delray Beach.
Right.
And it's in a historic building, I learned.
It is.
Yeah, how old is that building?
I don't have the exact date, but I believe it was from the 30s, and I think it was a car dealership early on, and it has these beautiful high ceilings with the wood inside, and then it was a few different incarnations since then, but I love it there. There's a lot of history, and it's a great location.
Yeah, the studio itself is, I really like it. I signed up for this 6-month yoga engagement for me. And I really did need to sign up for 6 months, because if I could just do it a few times, I would have done it a few times and then probably dropped out.
Right.
And I was a little obsessed in the beginning, so I would go every day of the week for about the first 2 months.
A lot of people do, and I wouldn't say obsessed, because once we get into our conversation, you'll understand why you feel so good doing it, and it becomes a ritual and a habit, which is going to be some of what I talk to you about.
Yeah, I want to ask you some personal questions about where you're from and all of that. Great. And your dance.
That's part of it.
But because we're talking about me joining your studio and doing the yin yoga, I got to tell you, I've had misconceptions about what yoga is. And initially, I didn't really understand that it was even for men. It didn't seem like it was hard enough to be considered exercise until you did it. And I just didn't see the point. The other thing that, because I work in the field of addiction, yoga became popular in treatment programs. But it seemed to me it was more of a filler. Yes. How do we fill this hour? Oh, we'll give them yoga and meditation, versus something as equal as any other kind of therapy.
Yes.
And now that I'm engaged in yoga regularly, I can see the therapeutic value of yoga as an equal practice as any other therapy that's provided in a treatment program.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I would go further and say that it is above and beyond a lot of practices that are offered, because the practice has stood the test of time for thousands of years. The philosophy of yoga, and I'll ask you your experience since you've been doing it in a moment. The yogis and the great sages sat around with nothing better to do. They didn't have their smartphones, they didn't have computers, TV, or anything. They really studied the human mind. And yoga is one of the meanings of the word yoga is to yoke, to steer. They wanted to end our suffering. That's the premise of this practice. It goes beyond the poses. It goes beyond what we call the asana, the poses. And what they were doing is they were sitting in meditation, contemplating how to feel better about themselves. They had not the same problems, but the same, what we call afflictions of the mind, fears, doubts, sadness, grief. And they realized that these, we call them kleshas, but these afflictions of the mind, which bring people into addictive behavior, also affect everybody's happiness and well-being. And I like to say that, we are so conscious of the food we eat, organic, filtered water, but what about our own thoughts? And there's a beautiful quote that every cell in our body eavesdrops on our thoughts. And actually our own thoughts can bring dis-ease into our bodies, a stress response, and we'll get into that a little bit. So again, I would venture to say that yoga is a lot of therapies that have been brought forth actually have a yogic basis to them. And there's scientific evidence and proof as to how breath work, which we'll do in a little bit, meditation, and then we move the body because it is the vessel, right? We only have one. So another great quote that I love to say is, our issues live in our tissues, which is kind of funny. But really, and you take yin, which is a slower practice, and we hold the poses and we get deep into the connective tissue because we're energetic beings. So all of these things are these seemingly so simple, but they're really profound. And yes, it's used as a filler, but I think if it's taught in a way to really understand the connection to your nervous system, how these practices can help shift your mindset, especially an addictive thought, how you can change. That's the one thing you can have control over. People
Absolutely.
think you can't. You can't control other people or circumstances, but the one thing you can is kind of reset, reframe. So if it was expressed in that way when it's offered, I think people would really see the value and the benefit to
And
it.
one of the things that you said, which is really important, and it takes practice and it takes work.
Yes.
Because my thinking is running my life. I want to switch that around. I want to better manage my thinking.
Yes. Bingo.
And,
Perfect.
And so yoga, from what I'm learning, is giving me an opportunity to, on some level, take control of my thinking.
So I just wrote some thoughts down. So your traditional recovery modalities focus on understanding the addiction, but yoga works through the body and nervous system, helping us regulate stress, reduce cravings, build tolerance for difficult emotions. That's really important.
That is absolutely important, because I'm not always able to go to my therapist, go to my doctor, get something for something.
Totally. It is doing the inner work. We call that self-study or svadhyaya. That's a Sanskrit word. But
What is that word again?
Svadhyaya.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way
It's
that
kind of a
sounds.
funky word, but it's self-study. And, that is the work of the yogi. You have to have a little discomfort, a little discipline.
And you have to
Nothing-
be able to tolerate it.
Right. So that's how this practice really helps if you are, you're going to give into a craving and you feel like you have no control. You do. It may take a little time to, understand your mind. And I always say, all feelings are correct, right? We all have good feelings. We all have bad feelings. There's no judgment on any of them. But you don't want to sit with them too long, right? So we have these tools. One of the main ones is really present moment awareness, just being in this moment. Most people are not. And I'll give you an example. How often have you walked into a room and you forgot what you went in there for?
Many times.
Right? Or you misplace your keys, or something like that. It's not that we're getting more forgetful. We're not present. We're multitasking. What happens is when people fall into depression or rumination, they're in the past. They regret. So you're living in a time that doesn't exist. If you have anxiety and worry, which a lot of people do, you're in the future. Again, doesn't exist. If you can sit and learn to be in stillness, even just taking a deep breath, which we'll do in a moment, I'll have you do that. 99.9% of the time you are fine in that moment. So you begin to disconnect from the conjecture of what brings you into discomfort. Once you can learn to use these tools, it gets easier and easier. Just like any other thought. I would venture to say that most people wake up with at least one thought that they've carried for 10 years, 20 years. Oh, that person did that to me, and it's their story, or my mother did this, and I had an awful childhood. You become almost addicted to that drama, right? There's actually endorphins that go off in your mind when you're in that place. So the yogic philosophy, using the body, using the breath, a little bit of mindfulness, a little meditation, and everybody can meditate, it's not that hard. You switch the narrative, you disconnect from that feeling of that story that is bringing you down. This is yoga. Now, of course, there's the deeper asana practice, the vinyasa, which even the hot yoga, which I don't really do in my studio. That's more of a Western concept, and a lot of people will get a little antsy with me with that. But, the Western philosophy is more is better. Let's sweat. Let's work it out. Yes, you can do harder poses, but that's not really the point. Yes, you're working your body. You gain flexibility. You gain balance. All of that is true. But then it's what you learn while you're doing it.
And I will tell you, I have done hot yoga before.
Mm-hmm.
I did it, I got a free pass for a month. So I
Right.
did it 17 days in the 30 days. It was a good experience.
Right.
But I don't go to yoga for that.
Right.
I heard about hot yoga. Let me try it.
Yeah, nothing against it. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. But that's not why I go to yoga. I'm looking
Right.
for something deeper. I'm looking for a spiritual connection.
Yes. Yes.
I'm even the physicality of it is one thing, but I think the spiritual development is what I'm really there for. And I love yin
Yes.
because for me it puts me in a relaxed state,
Mm-hmm.
and I can practice meditation
Right.
as I'm engaged.
So,
Hold that thought for 1 second. I'm sorry. This is slipping down.
oh, so sorry.
No, it's my fault. It's driving me crazy.
Didn't even notice that I'm so engaged in this conversation. So, you mentioned this spiritual, and I want to be clear. Yoga is not a religion, but it is a spiritual practice. And the way that I teach is, so just to backtrack a little, yes, yoga can be a workout. I teach vinyasa classes, which are a little more rigorous. You know,
Sure.
you get into the poses, you got to hold them, it takes strength. But I also am really, my wheelhouse is weaving in themes that can resonate to help us when you're off the mat, because yoga really is off the mat, right? How you live your life. The spiritual part of it is really to be in touch with the divine you. Now, yoga has a lot of goddess and goddesses and deities and things, but they all represent an aspect of human nature. Like there's Ganesh. People have seen the half elephant, and so that's the remover of obstacles, right? But what are the obstacles? The obstacles are in our own minds, right? Those are the fears, the doubts, the things that get in the way of our being happy. So when I weave that in, it is to be in touch with your heart, your spirit, your intuition. And many of us are disconnected, especially if you're seeking outside things to fill you up. So this is a perfect way to develop a mind-body connection, which is really important. The way that I teach is I have you feel what's going on in your muscles. Can you bring yourself into present? Can you establish this connection to your body? Because a lot of us don't have that. And the most important thing is the yogis consider your intuition a superpower. And generally, when we have drama and trauma in our life, we disconnect from our intuitive knowing, that really distinct voice that tells you right from wrong, right? You kind of lose touch. So very often, especially in yin, I'll even ask or recommend you have your eyes closed. So you don't need to see anybody else. Everybody looks different. Trust who you are. Listen to my cues and just be in your body and trust that internal voice.
And let me say something about that, because that's one of the things that I've practiced at your studio, keeping my eyes closed. And the reason I keep my eyes closed is I have a tendency to compare myself with others. Who's doing it right? Who's not doing it right? I'm always doing it wrong when I compare myself to others.
Ooh, I want to talk to that.
If I can keep my eyes closed,
Yes.
I can do whatever it is that I need to do and move away from the judgment.
Perfect.
My job in my life is to be less judgmental of me.
Yes.
And then if I can practice that and get good at that, I will be less judgmental of you. But the looking at other people, it's just like has been a theme in my life, to compare myself to others, and every time I do that, I'm the one that loses.
Well, boy, this is a big topic. You know that quote, comparison is a thief of joy, right? So that's true. And this is a very essential yogic tenet, you know, to trust who you are. And, you know, it's interesting because there are types of yoga that are very militant, and we're trying to move away from that, where you had to put your body in a way that was the same as everybody else. And we have learned, and I don't teach that way, we have learned, you know, even our bones are different, right? So we have a femur bone that goes into the hip. If I'm going to force you, or you're going to look at someone else who has a different shape and have this idea you should look like that, you're going to do yourself harm. So that's anatomically something to think about. But you are right. We are all very judgmental. And you fall into this trap of this feeling of unworthiness. And that's a very basic thing, especially for people who are in recovery. A lot of the pain that you're trying to numb is because you either were told you were not good enough, or you just felt you were not good enough, or you didn't know how to compare yourself in a way. And, you know, the term self-care has been thrown around so much these days, but it really is true to have a space where you can do no wrong. And I say this in my class all the time. Nothing you do here is wrong. Can you imagine being in a place in a world where nothing you do
Where
is
nothing
wrong?
is wrong. And I've also added the philosophy, there is no good or bad, there just is. And anything that I've deemed as bad, it's reframed into an opportunity to grow or a learning experience, because the bad stuff is actually the good stuff, because it gives me something to work through.
Right.
And yoga is challenging, and it gives me something to work through. When I cross my legs and hold, my knees are up high.
Right.
I notice the women in the class, their knees are down low. Well, mine don't get there.
Right.
And you know, I've become okay with high knees, you know, and just doing my thing. I cannot sit
I love that.
on my heels.
Right.
There is no, and I see these women in this class, they're all sitting on the heels, and I can't do it. And then the other thing that is a comparison for me is oftentimes I'm the only man in the class. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. I shouldn't be here with all these women. This is women's work, you know.
No. Actually, I do have a good percentage of men that come to my studio.
Well, there's
you know,
two
different-
guys that I see pretty regularly when I'm there.
Right. So, you know, anatomically, we're all different. We have different range of motion. We have different flexibility, different ages. Has no bearing. People say to me, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. Well, the opposite is true. You get flexible as you practice yoga. And you know what? What's great? You can gain flexibility at any age. So that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
The comparison, you know, it's natural human behavior to want to compare. But coming back to, you know, the mind-body connection, and I did want to make a couple of points here. To be in a class where you are humbled, well, that's not such a bad thing. That's another lesson, because, you know, we're all going to be embarrassed. I even say, you know, I'll teach in my vinyasa classes balance poses, and to the point where I almost want people to fall over, because that's where you learn, right? And we laugh, right? To be okay with making a mistake. These are emotional tools that, quite frankly, are not taught. So we become embarrassed, we become full of shame, and shame is a big thing. You know, shame is underlying a lot of addictive personalities, right? You're just ashamed of what you went through. But what yoga is the great equalizer. What if you can go into a space, feel safe, and I work hard because I've studied, quote, trauma-informed yoga, but really is how I teach anyway, mindful of the way I say words, who may be in the room. I presume everybody that walks into my studio has had trauma, because it's true. We've all gone through stuff, whether it's illness or, you know, grief or divorce or whatever. We all have stuff. That's the human condition. But I try to create a safe space with my words, with my intentions, so that people can take a breath, feel okay, and then once you start coming, it becomes a feel-good ritual and a place where it dissolves the shame, because you feel like it's a great equalizer, right? We're all the same.
We're all the same. And when I'm in the class, it's not that I'm separating myself from people, but I'm focused on me and why I'm there.
Right.
And do my best to stay in the moment. So I'm not looking to the right or the left, because that will take me out of the moment of where I need to be. The other thing that I wanted to comment on this earlier that you said, and one of the things that I say about the body, this body has to last a lifetime.
Yes.
And so what am I going to do with this body to help me with longevity and health?
That's a great topic. Yogis that practice, you will notice them in the crowd. You know, and they don't all look alike, but there's a certain sense of posture, you know, alignment of the spine. When we work the body in the way that we do in yoga, we help create strength with all of the muscles and all of the connective tissue, particularly to support the spine. There's a great yoga teacher, Iyengar, who said that you're only as young as your spine is flexible.
I've heard that one before.
It's very true. So that's why we do twists, we do spinal extension and flexion, we move the spine in every direction, because the connective tissue, the muscles, the fascia that support the bones support the spinal column, which then supports the way the breath moves, which then supports the health of the organs. So there's scientific reason to it, but also the way we look, the way we feel, and otherwise.
There is also, I love the twists. It feels so good in my body.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the things that I do in yoga, when I do it, and what's happened over the last 3 weeks, I don't know if I'm not there on the days that you there. Yesterday you did some twists.
Yes, usually I do.
And I have missed the twists for a couple of weeks, and I love the twist. I don't know what it does.
Noted.
Yeah, I don't know what it does, but it's such a feel good for me.
So there are some people that say there's like a detoxification that happens. It's not really, that's kind of a blanket statement. But what it does is it creates mobility, as I said, through the connective tissue, which also helps the oxygen flow through the body, which helps bring a rush of fresh oxygen to the organs. So there's so many levels to yoga physically that create well-being. And again, postures, you know, we are in an epidemic of round-shoulderedness. We see it a lot because we're texting, we're hovered, especially since COVID, you know, that we have this like dynamic of closing in. So I spend a lot of time of opening up the chest, the upper lobes of the lungs. We do a lot of breath work, which I want to do a little bit here. We're not breathing fully. That helps support all of our systems. So there's so much that goes on. And the breath work is a direct link to our autonomic nervous system, which is your fight-flight response. There's also an epidemic of people being in their fight-flight response all the time. We don't know how to shake that off. So that is a stress response. Stress brings disease. A lot of what's going on disease-wise is because we can't get out of that fight-flight response. We're always revved up. Our hormones are revved up. We're getting headaches, skin irritations, you name it, all because of that. We have something in our body called the vagus nerve. It's the longest cranial nerve. The breath is a direct link to the nervous system through that nerve, and a place to go when you're feeling overwhelmed. So what I wanted to do is just a little bit of a breath meditation so people can kind of feel
for
it.
Absolutely.
If you would be so kind to close your eyes if you're listening. Just feel yourself grounded. And this is both a breath work practice and also a little meditation. And you realize that meditation can be so simple. So just feel yourself sitting or lying down or wherever you are. Just notice your feet, your legs, your arms, without judgment, just sitting, lying down. And I'm going to invite you to breathe in gently through your nose for 4 slow, full counts. You want to feel your belly expand on the inhale, and as if you were bringing the breath up towards your third eye, right at the brow, 4 counts. And then through soft lips, like you're blowing out a candle gently for 4 counts. Really long, really slow, let all the air out. And then through soft lips, like you're sipping in through a straw for 4 counts. Make this count slow. And then out through your nose for 4 counts. And we're going to do this a couple more times. So in the nose for 4. Maybe just visualize the breath or feel it. And then out through your lips for 4. And then sip it in gently for 4. And then out the nose for 4. And I'm going to do one more round, and I'm not going to cue it. And it doesn't matter if you get it mixed up. We're just going to go on our own. So I'll begin with the in for 4 through the nose. And then when you complete that 4 count exhale, just let the breath find its natural rhythm without judgment or too much thought. And sit for a moment. Notice how you feel without judgment. Everything is right. And then when you're ready, you can flutter your eyes open. You want to share how that felt?
It is a much needed break throughout the day to take some time to just sit and relax and take the breath in and just be in that moment where I'm not thinking or concerned about anything, although my phone rang and that distracted me for a second.
Yes. But just for a second, right? You were able to bring yourself back
I was able
in.
to bring it back.
Correct.
And because the other thing that I've learned is that you can meditate with things going on around you, that it doesn't have to be absolutely silent for it to work.
That's a great point. So 2 things. That meditation, because we counted, it brings your mind to something to focus on, right? So if you can't meditate, or you say you can't meditate, even if you did that, you counted your breath, that's a meditation.
Sure.
Right? So your mind is focused on that. And we do need to be able to train the mind in a way so that we're not letting the outside world ruin our inner peace. And it could be something so simple as the ringing of the phone, but it's everything in our lives. You know, if somebody says something to you that's unkind, how are you going to reflect on that? You know, the yogis believe it's their innate personality that is causing them to be unkind, and to you not to take on that energy, which is hard to do. It's normal behavior. But to learn how to manage the input around us so that we're not drawn into that and take away our inner peace.
Because the truth is that negative energy, if somebody has that negative energy and is throwing at me, I have a choice to respond negatively and engage in the negativity.
Totally.
Or move away from it.
Totally.
It's like if somebody's throwing a fist at you, why would you put your face right into it? Why not?
Well, that's a good point.
Back away.
Yes.
I'm going to back away. I don't want to get punched in the face.
It's I was looking for something to kind of go along with that, but that's okay. So when we begin a class, I often say to sit quietly, close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, I like to say you see more, not less, because we begin to get into our internal world. And it's also to let go of the outside input, the noise, the sounds, but also the sounds of our own voice, our own mind, right? So that's what causes the suffering in our lives, this constant chatter of not being good enough or being told something isn't true. I would venture to say that at least 60% of the things that we say to ourselves aren't even true. They're learned behavior, they're external kind of input that we believe is true. If you really sat with yourself, you pull apart and you decipher the things that are close to your heart, that are your own divine soul's purpose, and connected to your intuition. And that is what yoga helps you do, besides the physical practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to, we didn't talk about this, and this really has nothing to do with yoga, but maybe it does have to do with yoga.
Okay.
How did you get started with this? Where are you from in all of this?
Thank you. So long ago, I grew up in New York.
New York City?
In the city. And I was a very, very shy child. Mortifyingly shy. And it's so funny because, I can speak in front of thousands of people and I still have that little reserved nature. But my mother decided to enroll me in dancing school at 3.5 years old. And that year, I got the solo because you put me on stage and something happened, right? Something happened. I just came alive. I just loved it. So I danced my whole life. I was a trainee with the Martha Graham School. Did modern dance. And in fact, what some people don't know is backtrack a little bit. I became a personal trainer at a very young age, and then moved to Florida in 1990, so it's 35 plus years. Continued to move to Florida, but when I was here, I was teaching adult tap dancing all over South Florida because I'm a tap dancer, a Broadway quality tap dancer, so I was teaching it all over.
Well, let me go back to the dance in New York, because I used to work in New York.
Oh, wow.
I worked in New York City, and I used to work with Dance Theater of Harlem.
Oh.
And so I worked with a lot of the dancers, and the thing that surprised me about dancers is that there were so many injuries that they had.
Right.
And so many of them were on medications that they became addicted to because they didn't want to lose whatever their position was in the dance.
Right.
So they danced through the injuries.
Right. So I never made it to company level where it was the rigorous daily, especially ballet and Dance Theater Harlem, definitely. So it wasn't that I was forced or felt like I had to work through injuries. Fortunately, my training was pretty good, and at this point in my life, I have no injuries, no pain. And a lot of it is just self-awareness, proper alignment in the way that I move, and then I teach that to my students in yoga. But it was also interesting, if you look at the Graham technique and other modern dance, there's a lot of yoga movement in it. The spirals, the deep contractions. It's quite fascinating. And I didn't realize that till later on. I'm like, oh my gosh, she must have gotten that from yoga, maybe knowingly or unknowingly. But it's always there.
And the funny thing about dance, at least for me, I was ignorant of it until I started working with these dancers. All of the athleticism that goes along with, as a I don't know anything about dance. Oh, they're just dancing. But when I really started to listen to them and talk to them, and then I went to some of the studios and watched them, they are really they're no different than a football, basketball, soccer player.
You're right. It is an athletic pursuit. There's hours of drills and repetition because, again, like yoga, you're building mind-body connection, muscle memory. So they're doing a pirouette or an extension. It's like not even a thought in the performance. You know, the way the toe is pointed. Now, yoga isn't that specific, and I actually take away that part because that's more competitive. But yoga is the dance of life. In fact, the whole class represents a life cycle, which most people don't really understand. And I'll tell you, you begin with the breath. Sometimes in child's pose, you're like a little seedling or you're just waking up. And we end in, and this is so beautiful to me, well, maybe not this part, but why it is, we end in what we call Shavasana. Shavasana is corpse pose. That's not the beautiful thing. I don't want corpses in my class.
Yeah, that was like a weird name.
But,
that's a corpse pose.
But,
that's,
but I'll tell
pose.
you what's not known is, well, what's the corpse? You're lying in stillness in this beautiful state to try to attract this place of bliss, but you can only obtain that if you lay to rest those things that get in the way of your peace.
I have been in corpse pose, and I have transitioned somewhere.
Yes.
And I don't know, and it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
It happens sometimes.
Right.
And it happens sometimes for a minute or two.
Yes.
And then I'm chasing it. How do I get this
See,
back?
that's a yogic philosophy. There's duality and non-duality. When there's non-dual, you're like at one with the universe. But as soon as you realize that you're not in it anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's
that's a whole esoteric other podcast that we can do. So I love that reflection. Thank you. That is a place where you want to hopefully go, but you don't want to chase it. But you can't get there unless you let go of the fears and the doubts and the tension and the worry. So my whole point of the way that I teach is that I weave in this philosophy through the entire class. While you're moving, while you're breathing, there's a method to my madness, so that when you get to Shavasana and you are just lying in stillness, that you can maybe touch upon that sweet place that you have, and you have to surrender. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in life, you have to surrender.
And we say in recovery, surrender to win.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to wrap up.
Okay.
I wonder if you could just give me some tips in how to create a daily practice, just for our listeners. How can they?
To start off, first of all, I own a studio, so beyond the fact that I own a studio, I think it's important to have a place to go. Now, you can certainly do it on your own, but then you have accountability, and you have to kind of know if you're doing it right, what is right, but at least in a safe space. So, maybe try out a place that you feel comfortable, and the styles are different. I would say yin is a good practice because you could just show up and kind of like stretching with breath, and you learn the tools. And it becomes a part of your life like any other good ritual, like, something you would do for yourself, eating a good breakfast or, something in that way. And you become in tune with how you feel when you do it. So the experience is important. You want to find somebody that's a good teacher, that has your best interest at heart, and just start by doing it. I mean, like anything else, you have to show up. I always say, everybody in my classes, thank yourself for showing up. That's 99% of anything. It takes some dedication. It takes a little bit of discipline. It doesn't have to be a whole class at first, although if you're in a class setting, it's good to kind of stick it out. But even just a little bit. I offer my classes on Zoom as well, so people can tune in if they're a little bit shy. I do privates as well, so you can learn the language. So there are many ways to begin a practice. And even if you don't want to do the physical practice, just work on feeling present and grounded by taking a deep breath. I always say the breath is a tool we always have. You can be shopping and feeling overwhelmed. This time of year especially, people are very overwhelmed and trigger the holidays, very emotional. Just take a breath. That's a yogic philosophy.
Okay. So how can people get to know you and find out more about you and what you're doing?
Sure. So the best place is Instagram and or Facebook, and it's under my name. It's Fern L. Conn, FERNLCONN. I post things on there all the time, and it has my contact information to the studio. You can find out about our classes. I write a weekly newsletter that is really helpful. It talks about real life and yogic tools if you want to subscribe to that. I'm actually going to be making that into a book. That's
nice.
My next year's venture. And, I can offer the studio phone number too. We can put that in the notes if that's what you do.
That'll be great.
And I'm always available through email, even if somebody has a question and I don't know you and you just had a question about what yoga is or something that's, seems interesting to you. I always answer and happy to.
What's your email address?
It's dancinglionstudio@gmail.com. So it's
that's
all
easy
one
to
word.
remember.
Really, yeah. And I'm happy to answer. I do private wellness coaching. I'm a public speaker. I speak at all over the world. I lead retreats all over the world. So I
just got back from Thailand.
From Thailand and Japan. Yep, brought a group there. So I do a lot of things to help in the path of healing.
Great. So it was great having you.
Thank you. It was great to be here. Thank you. I'm grateful.
Just so the listeners know, I can be reached at CoachMichaelHerbert.com.
Awesome.
I also am at Recovery Guide on YouTube and Recovery Guide on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So good. Great having you.
Follow us both.
Yeah, follow us both.
All right. Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by Guardian Recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction or mental health challenges, Guardian can help. Visit guardianrecovery.com or call 888-721-3790 for confidential support and guidance.